You are now tuned in to the Dads Who Lift podcast. Please give us a like, share, subscribe to the YouTube account. We are on www.dadswholiftofficial.com. All the podcast links are in there. We also have an apparel line. We're on IG as Dads Who Lift Official handle. We're on Facebook, Dads Who Lift Podcast. We also have a Dads Who Lift fitness group on Facebook that's Dads Who Lift Official. A group of 30,000 like-minded dads that are just trying to be their best selves and staying fit. If that's something you're into, please check it out. But we do this stuff for free, guys, so please give us a like, share, 5-star review. We really appreciate your support. You are now tuned in to the Dads Who Lift podcast. You have your host, Tyler Gaeta.
Co-host, Joel Staley.
And we have on special guest, Robert Bain, which is also a member of our Dads Who Lift official group on Facebook. Robert is a competitive powerlifter, won multiple national and world titles, coached his 13-year-old daughter, now 14-year-old daughter, to 2 national titles and 1 world title. Father of 4, married 15 years, also has his own podcast called Strength and Anger. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Man, that guy sounds awesome. I don't know how I'm going to follow that up.
Yeah, right? No shit. Did I nail it?
Yeah, I think so, man. I mean, I'll add my daughter now has a couple more national titles and another world title. She had a very successful 2020, even though it was kind of a crazy year, but she had a very, very good year.
They still doing meets in 2020, were they?
Yeah. Once Illinois kind of opened back up, we crammed a year's worth of meets into 4 months.
That's crazy. So she was.
It was like every other weekend we had a meet going on.
Yeah. So 14 years old. How many world titles now?
So she has now 3 world titles, 1 open and 2 teen. So age group, and then she actually won the open last year against everybody, all ages in her weight class.
That's crazy, man. So what? All right. So I've got a 10-year-old son, right? And I haven't brought him to the gym yet. And everybody says 12, but obviously if you're winning world titles at 13, she started before she was 12. So when did you start her? I mean, what's a good age to start your child into lifting, especially competitive lifting? And I kind of just want to get in and talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's been a family thing for a long time as far as just fitness goes. My wife is a group fitness instructor. She was a cheerleader in college. I played soccer in college, and so fitness has been a part of our life since the kids, were born, and even before the kids were born. And so the kids were around it a lot. When I started competitively powerlifting, my daughter's always been a daddy's girl. And so she always wanted to come with me to meets. She really liked the people. One of the really cool things about strength sports overall, and then especially powerlifting and powerlifting in Illinois and the Midwest, the women's scene is exploding. There are strong women. There are amazing powerlifting women everywhere. And so it was really cool. I had a lot of people that I could point my daughter towards as far as like role models, as far as athletics and people that she could actually have access to. That was kind of the big difference. One of the best lifters on the planet, Crystal Tate, actually trains at my gym. 705-pound raw squatter, over 800-pound multiply squatter. She's just crazy, crazy strong at 198 pounds. I mean, she's just a monster. And she knows my daughter by name. They text. Like, it's just kind of cool that my daughter had access to that. So that was probably when she was 10, 11 years old. She starts kind of poking at me like, oh, this would be fun. She's doing gymnastics at the same time. Like, that's the platform is permanent. Gymnastics is temporary. Don't worry about it, honey. And it all kind of came together in early 2019. We were at a powerlifting meet at my gym. As a women's only meet, I brought my daughter down there to support all the ladies. And somebody asked her, when's she going to compete? So kind of like the usual, like, oh, when are you going to start playing sports like your dad, right?
Right.
And Lily's like, oh, well, I don't know what the age groups are. And so we said, oh, I think it's 13 is the opening. Like, that's when you can start lifting in the APF and the federation that we compete in. And she's like, well, I just turned 13. I could do it. So we look at everything. It's like, well, this could work out from a timing perspective because gymnastics would be in the off season. She could do the Illinois state meet. So basically I could, work on her technique. She could just go get a total, get in. And then nationals that year in 2019 was over spring break. And I'm like, well, I'm doing nationals. You could come with me to South Carolina for spring break and with, our friends that are competing. And then if you win, you would qualify to go to Orlando, which is be during the summer. And we would basically combine our family vacation with that. So it was some tactical behind it. And then she just kept winning. And it was crazy. She goes to the state meet. She wins the teen. She wins the open. She at 103 pounds. She deadlifted 198. Wow. And yeah, like the whole place just erupted. They went crazy. It was really cool, actually. This is, I don't know how much of the history of powerlifting you guys have really kind of dove into, but the godfather of powerlifting, Ernie Franz, is from Aurora out here in Chicago. He actually just passed away a few weeks ago. The last meet that he attended was that meet, and he talked to Lily probably, I don't know, half an hour before that deadlift. And I mean, this is a guy who, I mean, Westside Barbell, every gym in the Midwest basically can stem back all the way back to Ernie. And here's this dude, 87 years old, talking to my daughter about life and winning and all that. I'm like, holy shit, man, how cool is this?
Right.
And so, yeah, so we go to nationals. She wins nationals, qualifies for worlds. We go to worlds, and she wins the teen, and she gets third in the open. She lost to a girl from the US, and then the girl who won actually was from Great Britain, like 30-year-old chick. And she lost her by 10 kilos. So I was like, okay, this girl has some talent. Like, this is awesome.
Right. And that was her first meet.
That was her first worlds. Yeah. So her third meet overall in her first worlds. And I mean, going into a room in Orlando, so we're hundreds of miles from home. She hears accents. She smells things she's never smelled before. He's got people from 20 different countries. And she just goes out and she just absolutely crushed. And I'm like, all right, looks like we have another thing that we're doing now. The best part about that, though, was that we have a picture of her and I facing the platform, both in our singlets, with Team USA on it, which is really, really cool. And then off to the side of that, you can see my wife and my other 3 children all like in the front row.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, that was one of like the coolest, like crystallizing moments. Like, wow, like our whole family can do this stuff.
Right.
Then during the lockdown, we really started, like the rest of the family started kind of getting into it. And my youngest son, he's 12. We started working on some technique stuff. He's not quite as naturally athletic as Lily was. So we've got a little more work to do, but he's open and excited about me possibly doing a meet this summer. Once he turns 13, a couple weeks later, it's going to be, a meet at our gym. So it's like, hey, it's the home gym. Dad'll spot you, and we'll have some fun. So it's been really, really cool. And then our youngest daughter, she's 11, and she's built just like me. So I mean, she's going to be a monster.
Do you feel like them getting into powerlifting has helped you excel? Because now, I know when you have a family, if everyone has their different interests, a lot of times dad's hobbies and interests go to the wayside for a little bit, at least more than being at the forefront of everything. But now that they've taken an interest in it, do you feel like that helps you take it more seriously too?
For sure. I mean, I always took it seriously. I being myself fairly competitive, but I think I look at it from a different lens now. The longevity that I knew I would have or wouldn't have isn't as big a concern anymore, because now I know that there's going to be a Bain on the platform, for a while. And so that's kind of cool. And so I think, but to your point, do I look at it differently? Yeah, I look at it very much from a coach's perspective now versus anything. And it's weird to put on that coach hat, that dad hat, and that teammate hat sometimes. With the kids, that's still something that I, to be very frank, I struggle with, because it's tough to be all 3 of those things and separately one of those things.
Yeah, you ever worry about, obviously injuries go hand in hand with lifting heavy ass weights, and when it's your little girl doing it, of course you want to see her be successful and push herself, but I know, like, even my 2-year-old, when she's jumping in the bounce house with some bigger kids, I'm like, oh man, just be careful. I don't want to see my little girl get hurt. Is there part of that when you see her pulling some heavy weights?
Sometimes, I'll be honest, I've been able to get over that fear because of her gymnastics too. I mean, when I see her doing a giant on the bars, and you see these girls are flipping around and, watching her do like a tumbling pass, just, messing around with her friends. And she does, cartwheel, backflip, round off. And then she, does her finisher and she sticks it. And I'm like, well, she can do that. I mean, picking something up isn't that big a deal, because we do work on technique quite a bit. It's always in the back of my head, especially me having gotten injured last year. I mean, my kids also saw that, and I think that was kind of sobering to them. I ruptured the distal tendon in my left arm. So they watched me go through the healing process and surgery. So I think they are aware and cognizant of it. So I think that made them focus more on their technique and maybe dial it back a bit. But I know where their head's at. But as a dad, I mean, you always worry, of course. You're always kind of worried about it. I have told spotters, like, none of you are ever fast enough to catch my kid. Like, I'll always be running out there.
Right.
But luckily, we've chosen good numbers. They've never had to really do anything with that.
I think this is huge and sweet, man, because there's, you see it all the time in our group, and I know fathers, husbands, they struggle with this all the time, but this dynamic of how do I get to the gym and balance my gym time and my work time and my life and my family time and all this stuff. You got this whole dichotomy of, am I pulling too much time away from the family by using my gym time and whatnot? I know a lot of guys struggle with that, or their wife's getting angry because they spend too much time at the gym. It's really cool to see that you've just taken the whole family into the atmosphere, right? So it's not anymore. It's not just like, I mean, I'm sure it's still your time, but it's not just your time. It's like family time now.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be times where, Lily and my wife and I, my wife's name is Nicole, Nick she'll do her thing. She is not necessarily as interested in powerlifting as I am. I mean, she likes the results of me doing it. Right. There's some ancillary benefit there for all of us, but she'll go there. She's part of the culture there. She likes the team. We have a very large facility, so we can spread out. We can be safe, and so she likes that as well. And then she also sees that, me and my kids get time together. And so, but because, to your point, we've made fitness such an important part of our lives, we're able to juggle things a lot better. I mean, I do take time away where it's just me. I go to specialty gyms where, I'm going to be gone, for hours at a time. The way we kind of, make up for that is a lot of times we build our family vacations around meets. So like this year, National is going to be down in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It's right over by Dollywood and that whole area. So we're going to go spend about a week in the Smoky Mountains. Lily will compete. I'll work the meet, which also helps pay for the hobby, which is great. So we don't necessarily have that financial argument, which I know can also be an issue for some people. And then, we'll spend 5-6 days in the Smoky Mountains as a family and kind of enjoy ourselves. So we do kind of have that way to balance it as well.
What would you say to a guy that, man, he's into fitness, but his wife's not at all? He catches shit for going to the gym all the time, even though he wants to stay in shape, wants to take care of himself. Maybe the kids aren't too much into it yet because the wife's not into it. I mean, what do you say in that
Sure.
aspect of that dichotomy?
Well, first of all, like my first thing is, hey man, I get it. Like that does happen. We've had those arguments too. When we weren't all going to the gym together, that could be a challenge. I would work on the north side of Chicago. We live close to O'Hare. That's about 45 minutes away. Up and back, that's an hour and a half plus the training time. Like that's a lot of time away. So first of all, appreciate that your spouse is wanting to spend time with you. That's the reason why that argument's happening. And so I think you got to put yourself in their shoes, and then you got to explain, like, listen, like I have important things for me. You have important things for you. If, you're not willing to come and, physically be there with me, let's figure out the way that we can make this work for ourselves. Because, if you're married, especially, I assume you want to spend time with your spouse, but at the same time, you also need to do the things, for you. People talk about self-care and all that. You've got to be able to have that balance. And I think the biggest thing is you've got to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, and do you handle her diet, or do you guys have like a family coach that handles everyone's diet?
So I have a coach that handles mine. Mine's a little unique just because of what my goals are. I mean, I'm a big dude. I'm 5'8". I'm 265 pounds. I need to. It's easy for me to get up over 285, 290 if I really want to, because I just like to eat. So I got somebody who works with me and helps me kind of eat to fuel versus eat just to eat. My wife typically follows a lot of plans by Nicole Wilkins. She's a big bodybuilding fan and just a big Nicole Wilkins fan. And then I handle a lot of the nutrition for Lily. It's a challenge. I mean, she's 15, so it's like, she wakes up, oh, my stomach's not awake, I don't want to eat, or it's not cool to eat. So we do have to deal with like the body image issues too. But yeah, I mean, as far as like her diet, nutrition, I handle a lot of that. Give her a lot of pointers on, for the most part, eat whole foods. But listen, you're 15, have a monster here and there, like eat some crap and enjoy life.
How clean do you keep your diet being a powerlifter?
That's a great question. In the run up to competition, it's fairly clean. Same thing. I do enjoy life. My profession in non-COVID times, I work in sales, consulting, logistics, and so it's a very like bro network. And so it, 2 to 3 nights a week, you're going out for drinks with clients or stuff like that. So I try to keep that fairly light. One drink, and if I am drinking, it's going to be a scotch. So, even though it's delicious, it's, minimal on the calories, but, most of what I eat is going to be beef, potatoes, protein powder, found a really nice mixture actually of, protein, almond milk, and, Rice Krispies. It's delicious. Oh, yeah. Highly recommend as a post workout.
What do your calories get up to? I'm just curious personally.
If I ever have to cut weight, it'll usually get down to about 2,200. When I first really started massing, I graduated high school, I was 155 pounds. Oh, wow. Yeah, I was a soccer player, right? I was a little guy. I got hurt and I started putting on muscle because the doctor basically said you have, if you had more mass, you would have just got a stinger, you wouldn't have dislocated your shoulder. So I started eating. At that time, I was eating anywhere from 8,000 to 10,000 calories a day because I was training like an Olympian. I mean, I was practicing weightlifting, running. So I put on a ton of weight. I got up to like 205. And then I slowly added on a little more mass. Now, the typical day is going to be about 3,200 calories.
That's not bad.
Yeah. So again,
when Lily inevitably starts finding boys interesting and then starts taking away from the sport, how are you going to bring her back in?
So I got her permission.
He's asking for himself.
Yeah, that's fine. So when you have significant others, because she does have a person, and so that's a thing that we have to deal with. And the biggest thing is that we actually had this conversation last night. Like, this person can be a part of your universe. They can't be the center of it.
Right. Because
at the end of the day, you're 14, 15 years old. Like, the odds are it's not going to work out. Right. As much as kids don't want to hear that, and that's reality. But if the chance that it does, you've got to also be able to set up the healthy boundaries, because if all it is this person, then if anything ever happens, or you guys have to spend extended time of a period of time apart, then everything falls apart, and that's not okay. Because you've got school, you've got gymnastics. She's also a model. We're supposed to be in New York right now for New York Fashion Week. That got canceled, unfortunately, because of COVID. So you've got school, modeling, gymnastics, powerlifting. Like, you have a lot of things on your plate. I want you to have a person. I want you to have a social life, but you've made commitments, and you need to be able to, stand up to those.
Right.
But that is an ongoing and tough conversation, and not without a few tears. I will tell you that.
I bet. Hey, so what got you into powerlifting? Obviously, you brought the whole family in. You brought the kids in.
Yeah.
What got you into it?
So I played soccer, like I said, most of my life, almost 30 years, and I continued to play after college. And I had some really cool opportunities to play around, the Midwest. And when we moved to Chicago, I was playing in a league, and I got hurt. And I kind of went back and I take a lot of notes when it comes to my training, and just kind of understand. I realized I wasn't doing a lot of the big movements. I was doing a lot of ISO movements. I was doing almost no compound movements. So, like, I'm losing strength, and it obviously showed on the field, because I've got basically my knee buckled, and I couldn't walk for a few days. I'm like, I need to go back to this and build up that tensor strength and build up that compound movement strength. So I'm squatting at the YMCA here in Des Plaines, and as I'd like to tell a story, this creepy Russian guy was watching me squat, and I love Greg. He's awesome. But he's, 5'3", and he's just standing there looking at me. And I know if people ever watch the YouTube video, he's doing this, stroking his chin, watching me squat. I'm like, this is weird. I now know what ladies feel like sometimes when, dudes are watching them squat. Like, so I asked him, what's going on? He's like, oh, you have very good technique, and I'd like to see this. He tweaks a couple things. I was squatting like 405. And he throws another plate on each side. I'm like, hold on a second there, Haas. This bar can't handle this, really? It's 500 pounds. And I repped it out for 5 reps, and it felt like there was nothing on the bar. All he did was tweak a couple things with my technique. I'm like, wow, either there's steroids in your fingers, or you're onto something here. And that slowly started this journey. He just kept pushing me from that day. Like, you need to do a meet. You need to do a meet. You need to do a meet. And so on my birthday in 2014, March 16th, I did my first meet. And I was hooked. The atmosphere, the people, everything about it. I'm like, this is what I was meant to do. Like, this is extreme. These people are crazy. I remember walking in. I go to weigh in the day before I compete, and I walked into the gym it was in, and it's a big high school gymnasium, right? And there's 2 platforms set up, this big monoliths, and there's some guy. I didn't know what multiply lifting was at that time, but he's in this big, like, sausage suit, basically, all this compression and knee wraps. And I see his face is turning this bright purple as he's descending down very slowly into the squat. And there's easily 900 pounds, almost 1,000 pounds on the bar. And then I watch his face explode in the hole. There's blood everywhere come out of his nose. And he comes flying up. They rack it, 3 white lights. Everybody goes crazy. I'm like, I want to do that. That's so cool. Holy crap.
Oh, man.
It was I wish somebody could have recorded my inner monologue that day, because it was just surreal.
How old were you then?
I turned 32 that day.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So compared to most of my peers, I started very, very late. Like my co-host for the Strength and Anger podcast, Eric, he just turned 38 yesterday, actually, and he has been competing for 22 years.
So your message, I feel like, for your podcast is that your kids, your family, they need to see you in pursuit of something.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I resonated with that a lot. I feel like you're 100% accurate. If they see dad waking up,
Man should always be in pursuit of his passion.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Waking up with no purpose in life and just kind of here, emotions. I can see why A, you're not going to be happy, but B, as the leader of your house, people are going to be like, all right, well, I feel kind of directionless. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you figured that out and maybe just some general advice for guys who aren't natural powerlifting?
Yeah, sure. So, you're right. I always wanted my children to see me in the pursuit of whatever. And that's been in different stages. At first, it was, we were just trying to survive, right? My wife and I got pregnant, we were 19 and 20. So it was just survival at one point. And then there was a time when my children saw me pursue and build a career. And they saw long hours. They saw me working really hard. They saw dad change a lot when it came to, my ability to speak and my salesmanship. And they saw me, up late reading and, doing all these little things to, build our finances. And so I wanted them to see all that. And now we've kind of gotten to the point where like, hey, I had that season where I built my career, I built our finances, we have some flexibility, and now we get to do fun things. And now for me, the fun thing is pushing my body to the limit. And so now my kids get to see that. The reason why I want them to see that is because life is about a lot of different things. It is about relationships and it's about balance. And it's also about imbalance. There needs to be a time in your life where you are incredibly imbalanced so you understand that you can appreciate the time when everything is in balance. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think I told Tyler last week. I've told him a couple times. I've even said it on this show. I feel like I go in ebbs and flows where everything's going perfectly for a couple weeks, and then I'll get kind of lazy. I'll be like, all right, everything's in motion, and then, of course, when you let your foot off the gas a little bit, everything starts to slow down, and you're like, whoa, I don't want that, and then you find it again. But it's just this never-ending battle.
Yeah, and I think with being, pursuing whatever your goal is, whether it's going to be, powerlifting, bodybuilding, strongman, relationships, work, whatever. I think it's important that, especially children see that because there's so much going on in the world. There's so much noise, right? And especially for young people, you've got all the social medias, you have all the stuff that's inundating them with information. And there has to be something that is like the North Star that you can then drown all that out and go, that's all great. But listen, I don't care who's in the White House. I don't care who's across the pond. I don't care who's, doing what challenge. My goal is my goal, and that's what I'm focused on. And that's ultimately what I want my children to see is that.
Yeah, there's so much victimhood these days. That's like everything is how can I be a victim? Why? What are my reasons why I can't be successful? So especially in powerlifting, when it's black and white. All right, you either got the rep or you didn't. You got the you didn't. You won or you didn't. How continually improving your own numbers and moving up the ranks, it just shuts out that victimhood of like, okay, well, instead of I didn't win the meet because whatever this lady.
Because the khaki goon squad didn't give me the lift,
Exactly. It's very like, okay, it's on me to own this. How can I get better for the next time I show up?
Exactly. And that concept of ownership, I think, is another thing that, we do a lot with our children is to understand like, okay, cool. Like there's some circumstances you can't control, but what did you do before that to possibly put yourself in that situation? Like there's always items you can control, and just reframing and rethinking about a lot of things, I think is another very important part of just the parent experience and life and preparing your kids for the real world. Because to your point, there's so much victimhood. There's so much, oh, woe is me. Well, great. But if you can take control and you can own everything, your life is infinitely better.
That's what I love about fitness in general. It's almost like that staple. It's the first thing in my life that I was like, oh, wow, I'm noticing if I put this much time and this much effort and energy
you get in what you put out.
The results come.
You get out what you put in.
Yeah. And it's exhilarating. One of the things because again, I got teenage kids, so we talk about some pretty hard topics. They have friends that are experimenting with drugs and sex and all kinds of other crap, right? And I tell the kids like, listen, like some of that stuff's fun. Not gonna lie, dad did a lot of crazy stuff when he was a kid, but like of all the different things that I've done and tried and that almost got me killed, there is something about, and I use this squat as the example, throwing, like the first time I threw 700 pounds on my back and I squatted it, I have never experienced a high. I've done a lot of drugs. I've never experienced a high that much. It was incredible. And to know that because of how fast it moved, like there's probably more in there. And now we've gone on and, I've squatted, 720, 730, 760 was what I squatted last on my PR attempt. Like how cool is that I can continue to experience it? I don't have that feeling of like the degrading high that you would get with, something artificial.
You're winning, man. When you're in the gym, you're setting goals, you're setting limits.
Yeah.
You're hitting those goals, you're pushing your limits, like you're winning, you're moving forward. And that's why it's such a cool sport to bring the whole family into. Like me having a son at 10 years old, I think I'm going to start. I think that's a good age. People say 12, but fuck it. I think he's mature. He's big enough. I think I need to start getting him into the gym. I mean, not only do you set goals and win and push yourself forward, but it's just like you said, man, it's like an adrenaline. It's like, I don't know, it's just an amazing feeling. It's great discipline, first of all. So you're teaching your children discipline, your family discipline, but you get in there and you say, I'm going to do this, and then you actually do it. And when you actually do it, there comes a sense of achievement, it's adrenaline, and it's like a feeling that you can't even describe. And that's what I see is so much wrong with the world today, or going on in the world today, is that there's so many people that fucking talk, but there's not a lot of people that actually do. Yes. And the gym is all about doing. You can't talk weights to move. You can't talk to get stronger. Like you can't talk a rep, you can sit there and say, oh, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. But if you don't get in and put in the fucking work, it doesn't happen. And that's how it goes all the way through life, man. I feel like that's such a valuable lesson that you could throw to any child or teach any child is that, man, you can say whatever you want in this world. You can want so many things in this world, but if you don't go in there and actually do it and put in the work consistently to get towards your goals, you're never going to reach them.
Don't talk about it, be about it, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And once you get that first little, it is consistency, and it might take some time, but once you get that first, your daughter might start and get in the gym, or your son might start and get in the gym, and, they're only curling 5-pound dumbbells or whatever it is. But then within a week or two, oh God, Dad, guess what? I curled 7.5-pound dumbbells. Like that's a win that is undescribable. And if you can catch that win in the gym and actually stick consistent to get consecutive wins like that, that goes through everything in life. Then you're like, okay, I could do that in the gym. What else can I do that in? That I can do that in my sports, that I can do that in school, that I can do that in my job. I stuck with it here. It wasn't easy, but I got to a point I was consistent. I pressed forward and I won. I can do that in anything in my life.
100%. When we had this conversation a couple of times at the gym, a lot of us work in very high pressure jobs. I would say in my training pod, easily half of us, we sit in C-suites and we talk, sit across from CEOs all the time. Like, that doesn't scare me. It doesn't frighten me.
Right.
I'm like, I've almost died under a barbell. You think this dude scares me? He puts on his pants one leg at a time, man. No big deal. And it gives you clarity in a lot of things. And I think that's a beautiful part of the gym, and how, to your point, how it translates to everything. And then as you bring your family in, and having family wins, I mean, that there is just nothing more exciting than that. And celebrating that, and watching your children and your spouse, watching them progress, it's beautiful. It's to your point, indescribable.
Yeah, I think the consistency message is huge, because if you're just going to the gym on the days you want to and you're skipping out on the days, you don't ever get the results. And
right.
I mean, that's what I've taken away from it, is consistency. There's times in my business I don't want to cold call people. I don't want to message people, take calls all day. But I learned that from the gym, is like, well, I'm never going to get the results I want if I'm not showing up consistently and putting the work in.
And let's be real. Not every cold call is going to be great. Not every gym day is going to be great. You're going to miss a rep here or there. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to fuck something up, right? But because you did it, it's I don't say you feel better, but you almost do feel as good as when you get a W, because it's like, well, I didn't want to do this. I could have easily sat home, especially as an entrepreneur. You could sit at home and do nothing if you felt like it today. No problem.
Right.
But you'll also reap the rewards of that, a few weeks down the line.
Right.
It's kind of like if you're doing a set of 12.
Why? Gross.
They're really not that bad. You're not getting a whole lot out of it. And then that 11th and 12th rep are super tough. That's where you get the benefit. What you look at it is that was those first 10 cold calls that didn't go anywhere. You just had to get them out of the way so you could get to those 2 opportunities you finally got to. But you're never going to get to those 2 if you don't go through those first 10.
Exactly.
If you go in and put everything in, regardless of if you hit your goal that day or not, or hit a PR, it was a good lift or not, as long as you're full repping, you still won. As long as you got there and you're full repping, you're not half repping, you still won. You know what I mean?
I don't know. People say most powerlifters half rep everything. So
So we were talking a little bit about before the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Your daughters are both really into lifting. Your youngest, I believe, is starting to find out if he's into it or not. Your oldest boy, super into it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there ever like a jealousy is not the right word, but do any of your other kids see your relationship with Lily, where you guys are out on the platform wearing your Team USA shirts, and they're like, I don't want to say woe is me, but like maybe they don't feel like their bond is as strong because they don't have that thing in common with you as much?
Yeah, that's something I have to talk about with my kids a lot. Is the bond that I have with each one of the four of them is unique, and the way I explain it to them is like I don't love any one of you more or less than the others. I just love you all differently, and I love you for different things. As I've explained to like my oldest, like Austin made me a dad. Like there's nothing to ever take that away. He gave me, in my view, the most important title that I have other than husband, and that's father. I think there's more demand on me as that because with my wife, she chose me. We made this kid, and it's on me to teach him how to be a man. With my daughter, again, very unique with Lily in that she made me a girl dad. I think most of us, especially given, what happened last year with Kobe Bryant, I think there's a bigger appreciation for girl dads and that special relationship. With my youngest son, what's unique about Nolan is that he's silly, he's fun. He never takes anything too seriously, which is tough or is great for me because I take everything seriously. I am very intense, and Nolan is the one that can just walk up to me and go, "Cool, nice flex, boomer," and then he walks away, and it cracks me up. And like he brings this levity to our family. And then with Ella, she made our family complete. We thought we were done with Nolan, and then when we found out about Ella, my wife and I were just at peace. Where it's like, this is it. This our family is now whole. And so again, it's very different reasons why I love my children, and so I can never compare or contrast. They will, and I explained to them like, listen, is what Lily and I have special, 100%. Honestly, what Ella and I have is very special because there is a special bond between a father and a daughter. If you do it right, you are the first man your daughter should fall in love with. And then you're going to be the measure of every, person, whether it's male or female or neither or both or however it's going to be. You're the measure of what that relationship is going to be like too. And with my boys, like, I'm teaching them to be men, and that's a whole different dynamic as well. So it's conversations we have to have. Does it happen in the moment? Possibly. But at the end of the day, I tell them like, listen, the last name's the same, so it doesn't matter. We're all Bains.
Yeah, my daughter's gonna fall in love with guys full of tattoos and a mullet.
Tattoos and mullets. He's got it.
See, but here's the thing: when you have that culture of that physical culture in your family, my daughter looked at skinny dudes and it's like, wrong, no, hard pass. Right. So it's like.
So talking about pursuits, what pursuits are you going after now? I know you are doing the podcast, so that's that.
Yep.
Tell us about that and whatever else you're pursuing.
Sure. So I'll kind of narrow it down to a few things. I've got the podcast Strength and Anger. We just wrapped up episode 71. It just dropped yesterday. So we've got some pretty big things going on with that. We've got some interviews coming up. We're doing a huge tribute series to Ernie Franz. So Ernie was, I mentioned earlier, godfather of powerlifting. He was my co-host mentor. We actually have a whole museum of Ernie Franz memorabilia in the gym. So we're kind of doing that. We've got some really cool series coming up with regards to like PEDs, because I think that's a subject people have a lot of questions on, and people honestly they're fascinated by it. And so we've had a couple of guests on to talk about that. We've actually got a couple special guests coming in. They're gonna kind of break down exactly like their stacks, what they've done, how they got on it, how they get the stuff. So I think that's going to bring quite a bit of viewership and downloads. From a lifting perspective, I'm kind of taking most of this year off. I may compete in October. So I'm making the transition from raw lifting, which probably most of the listeners do, which is no supportive equipment, sans maybe a belt and some wrist reps, to multiply lifting, which is, depending on who you talk to, either the biggest cheaters out there or just the most extreme guys out there. Bench shirts, super squat suits, knee wraps, that kind of whole thing. That is a big transition because it's a different technique. It's a very different sport, to be honest with you. The timing of everything's different. The movements are unique. But it's cool because, just to give you some context, I benched 402 at my meet in December, raw, just with wrist wraps. And a couple weeks ago in a loose bench shirt, I touched 595.
Wow.
So I touched that to my chest, pressed it, flew super fast. The pressure feels like your head's going to explode. I basically saw Jesus. So it's kind of getting used to that. So that's a big pursuit of mine.
Make that much of a change.
So actually a whole episode on this, on strength and anger, about the history of the bench shirt. Basically the ways these were designed is the sleeves are not on the side like we have typical, like your t-shirts or sweatshirts. The sleeves are actually built to the front, and then there's a chest plate in the middle, which creates compression. So if you ever see guys, say again,
kind of like a slingshot.
It is a slingshot to the extreme. There actually are some very similar shirts to the slingshot. Those are called band shirts, where they're not a full shirt, but they're very similar, and they have the rubberized. These are not rubber; they're a poly material or sometimes a canvas. And so as it descends, the chest plate presses into your chest and it spreads. And these are truly where you can miss groove, and you can basically get stuck halfway down, and like you're not going anywhere. But it's a very, very unique type of lifting. And then with the squats, raw, I'm an 800-pound squatter, and there's a good chance that my first multiply meet, I'll take a shot at the grand.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's a goal that I've had for a few years. Is on my 40th birthday, which is next year, right around that time is when the Illinois State meet will be, and I want to give 1,000-pound squat a run on my 40th birthday.
What do they do for the multiply that's different for the squat?
So the biggest thing, again, if you ask the internet, they squat high. They take it to the letter of in a competition lift, and so this will get some people a little upset. A gym lift and a competition lift are very different. A gym lift at your local like Export or LA Fitness, you're going to see a lot of guys go ass to grass. In my view, unnecessary death. There's no point. Unless you're bodybuilding, in which case, yes, you want that full stretch.
I always go ass to grass.
Yeah, no, screw that. In a competition for powerlifting, the crease of the hip has to be below the top of the knee. That is the definition of a legal squat. And that's whether you're talking the IPF, the big mothership gold standard, all the way to the SPF or the RPS, which are the really kind of minor leagues, and they pass some pretty suspect squats. Most multiply guys are going to take that right to the letter. They're going to get just below that top of the knee, and then they're coming up, because that is the definition of a legal squat. And so, but the biggest difference is as you sit back into that squat, the pressure starts to build. You have the straps that are pulling you in. You've got this it takes 30 minutes sometimes to get into all your gear.
Wow.
So easy
and
out of the hole.
Oh yeah. I mean, I fly out of the hole. I mean, I had my briefs on Sunday, and I think I ended up squatting, it was like 565 for 3. The weight feels like nothing other than the pressure. But as I'm moving, the weight feels like nothing.
That's interesting.
So I highly recommend just go look up the WPO Super Finals 2019 on YouTube. You'll see the guys that are at the top of that game.
What's your heaviest raw bench?
Heaviest raw bench is 402. That's what I did in December. Yeah, so that was a big deal. That was 7 months after I had my distal tendon reattached.
That's crazy. And then
800
is the raw squat.
Yep, 800 raw squat, and then 740 deadlift.
Nice.
Yep.
Have you had to overcome any like big injuries or just challenges besides the obvious of having 4 kids while you're in the middle of all these, a full-time job, family, other obligations? Like, what in your pursuit of your powerlifting, what challenges have you had to overcome over the years?
Sure, good question. And real quick, the last thing that I'm pursuing, because I did want to finish out, there was 3 things. So I'm actually helping to grow the APF, our federation. I'm actually traveling around the country this year doing clinics on how to spot and platform manage. So that the same experience people have at 2XL at our gym, people can experience that all over the country. And so that it's a consistency with the meet experience. That's my big goal this year, is to help grow that, which is really fun. But the biggest challenge is injury. Yes. I mean, like I said, first major injury was last year. Leave it to me in a global pandemic to rip my arm apart. Right. And
did you even go in the hospital or anything like that? Or were they weird about it?
It was, the whole process was kind of weird. So it was right when Illinois reopened elective surgeries. The weird thing is it was not a life-threatening injury, but if we leave it more than about 2 weeks, that tendon starts to die. And so they had to get me in under 2 weeks after the rupture happened. So, we did the diagnosis. I went in, saw the surgeon, and he diagnosed it really quick. He's like, yeah, the tendon's just hanging. I can feel it, and we got to get surgery. So the surgery was the next day on May 8th. And the only weird thing was that, everybody's in masks. And when they put me in the recovery room, normally, somebody would be there next to you, like your spouse or, your person that's there with you. My wife could not actually come back into the recovery room. They had to wheel me out after I was done coming to. And we found out that when I'm under anesthesia, I am like belligerent. when I wake back up. And so I was like freaking out, pulling all the stuff off me, like, where the hell's Nicole? And they had to like get security. And this little 150-pound kid comes in. He's like, I can't do anything with this dude. So that was the only major injury I've ever had like overcome. Other stuff, we had some job challenges in 2017 that I almost got in the way of my my first Worlds. Very suddenly, I was let go at my job. We're some politics going on there. Part of it was some, I'll admit, was some poor decision making on my end. And so we went about 90 days with zero income. Oh, wow. And almost lost our home. I mean, it was craziness.
You must have had a little nest egg saved up.
No, that was the problem.
Really?
Yeah. So it was kind of crazy. We had some, we had invested some of it, and the investments went south.
Yeah.
All during this time where I wasn't working. And so we had some challenges there. That was tough.
Had to lean on family and friends, or?
I just had to hustle, man. I was driving Uber. I was doing I was doing personal training on the side with no certifications, anything I could do it was literally every day was hand to mouth.
Wow.
And, was able to right that ship. But that was a challenge. That was tough, man. But we stayed consistent in the gym. We stayed consistent with everything, because that was the only thing that kept my sanity during that time, because I could at least shut out all the noise and all the craziness that was going on.
Well, that's a test of your character as a man, to actually get out there and do something about it.
Yeah, it wasn't, it was humbling. I'll say that. And I will say this, definitely a test of my character, but also a true testament to how amazing my wife is, because everything pointed towards like, maybe this isn't really working out at this point. Cause it just was not a good situation. And, Nick has stood by me through thick and thin. I mean, granted, yes, I did knock her out when she was 19, so I kind of owe it to her, but she is stuck through everything. She is, I will say this, fellas, if you have a wife out there who is a completer, not a competer, oh man, you've won. And Nick completes me in every freaking way.
Now, I would think as a group fitness instructor, she might not have had that reliable of a job during that time too, or did she?
She was just getting started. She just had her certifications. Her schedule was probably 2 to 3 classes, which don't get me wrong, she gets paid $30 a class, but $90 a week doesn't really cut it.
Who were they? Right. Oh, they were still having the classes. I know a lot of people.
Yeah. This was back in 2017. So like last year, there was nothing. She was working at 3 different gyms, and 2 of the gyms closed permanently.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That was tough. One of them was the Leaning Tower Y here in Niles, Illinois. It's like a legendary Y. I mean, there was a hotel there. It was one of the first Ys here in Chicago. It actually had a sculpture of the Leaning Tower of Pisa out front of it. That's why it's called Leaning Tower Y. Huge powerlifting culture there at one time. I mean, a lot of meets were done there, and so that one hurt a lot of people that it closed.
See, this is what's pretty crazy. So, like, you stayed going to the gym during that whole thing, and a lot of people will sit there and go like, oh, how do you do that? How do you still go to the gym? How is that part of your priority? And people say that to me too. I own multiple companies. I raise my son by myself. I'm a single full-time dad. And like, how do you make time for the gym? It's like, listen, man, the gym is part of my day. It's part of my work day, Yeah, it's non-negotiable. If I don't go to the gym, I'll freak the fuck out. Like I'll lose it. There's no way that I can keep everything together and do everything that I do if I'm not at the gym. Not only physically, just mentally. You know what I mean? Like, it is my peace. It's my serenity. It's my time to let all my fucking emotions out. It's my time to let all my stress out. It's my time to feel good and accomplished about things that I'm doing in my life and my passion, which is the gym, driving forward. So it's like, people ask me, how do you still make time for the gym with how busy you are? I'm like, how do you not?
Exactly.
I assume that's the same thing that you were in. Like, hey man, you lost your job. You're fucking driving Uber. You guys are, day to day as far as probably even food went, bills went, whatever, but you're still in the gym. I mean, some people look down on that, and it's like, no, man, I would say that probably helped you it was probably a big part of you actually getting through that point in your life.
Oh, 100. Exactly. Because there I could it's weird to think this. When I go to the gym, that's one of the few places that I can take my armor off. Like, think about this. You go out, I use all the analogies. You're slaying dragons, you're doing all this stuff, you're fighting the fight, you're taking care of your family, but you've got your armor on. Even when you're, if you're owning multiple companies, you're talking deals. You're not two-faced, but you're a different person than when you're under a barbell, right?
Oh, 100%. Yep.
And when I get to the gym, I take it all off, but I also get to turn it up. my full personality gets to come out,
Yep.
and I don't have to hide anything. It's like I'm a nut job, and so I get to let it all loose. And so like for 2 hours or whatever it is I'm going to be in there, I get to be at 100%. I get to be, at volume 100, whatever I feel like doing. And that's what I needed. And to your point, during that time, that was the only way we made it through, because then again, all the noise was gone, and it was just me and the iron. And that was probably the most crucial time when I would say to myself, hey, if I die, I die. Like, there's nothing to lose at this point.
Right.
I've lost just about everything.
Right. I always get my best ideas when I'm fucking doing like my cardio or at the gym or like, running outside by the lake if it's nice out and not cold as fuck and -12 like it is right now in Nebraska. I always get my best ideas when I'm working out.
Yeah. I am probably the most honest on things too. Like after like a heavy squat or a heavy deadlift and like everything's a little sparkly, like, still seeing some stars or whatever. That's probably when I had the most clarity.
Yep.
Man, I love it. Yeah, it's like your therapy almost. So I would think during your hardest time, if you're just waking up and trying to make money and make ends meet and keep everything figured out from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, it'd be easy to just go crazy. But if you have that hour to go, just
it helps balance you out, man. That's what it is. It helps balance you.
And it's the habits, right? Because think about this. I took a big L during that time. That was a huge L, but it was just little baby wins every day that I was in the gym. And that helped build me back up to, what was cool was I got a job. I actually got the offer on the way to weigh-ins for Worlds that year. And it was, so I'll, little financial stuff here. So, logistics and supply chain sales, you can make a lot of fucking money, like a lot of money. I was a manager and it was a nice salary, $75,000 a year was awesome. Lost that job, 90 days, no income, everything just, going crazy. Get this offer. And it was my first $100,000 a year job. Nice. And I'm like, literally on the way to Worlds, like, wow. And I sat in the hotel and cried.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it was a good day.
I want to talk real quick. One, I want to ask you, what does it mean for you to be a dad who lifts?
Sure.
I always ask all of our guests that.
To me, it's, my kids can always say, hey, my dad can beat up your dad. That's fun. So they have that trump card. But to be a dad who lifts, it's being a dad is important. And to me, it is, one of the most important titles there, but it's not the only one. And to me, you have to be multidimensional. And so that's why I am a husband. I am a father. I am, a sales professional. I am a consultant, and I'm a lifter. And I think it's very important to have those multiple dimensions, because to be one-sided, my dad was incredible. He was an amazing man, and I love my father. My dad worked, and he raised us, and he was a husband. Nothing against that, but I think that he missed out on some parts of life because he did not create those extra dimensions for himself. He was dedicated to his family, and I appreciate that more than I can ever say. But I look back on it and said, I just don't want that for myself.
One last question I want to ask you is, and we touched on kind of some of it here and there, but how closer has your family become as a whole since this has become a family sport?
Incredibly. I would say that, my wife and I, she loves to watch me in that element with my children. And by the way, dads, if you're listening to this, there is nothing you can do more to turn your wife on than do shit with your kids. Being a good dad, man, that is the panty dropper right there.
Yeah.
So I just throw that out there. One. But then, from the kids' perspective, they see their dad completely engaged in the goals that they have. And that is something that I think is very exciting and very unique for them. There's a very special relationship with me and Lily because we have, had the opportunity to represent Team USA together. I fully believe that we will be able to, as at least a family of four. So myself, Lily, Nolan, my youngest son, and my youngest daughter, Ella. I fully believe there will come a Worlds one day where all four of us get to compete on the same platform. And I can't wait. I think that's going to be absolutely amazing. And just to hear, bars loaded for Bain, bars loaded for Bain, bars loaded for Bain, just boom, 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 all four of us. I think that's going to be exciting.
Not only that, even your older son, even if he doesn't get into it, it still gives the whole family something to cheer for.
100%. And what he loves to do too, and he and I have talked about this, like being able to then take all the video and all the different stuff that we get from training, from the meets, and he can turn it into the hype video. I'm like, let's go. let's go, bud.
Right.
And he loves that. And so it is truly a family pursuit.
That's awesome, man. Well, Robert, I appreciate you for coming on the podcast. Thank you very much. We were supposed to have you on last weekend and had last week rather had some technical difficulties. So I appreciate you coming back on this week, man.
How can people support you, by the way?
Yep.
Yeah. At Bain316 on Instagram, Robert Bain on the Facebooks, at Strength Anger is the podcast. Fully, appreciate any listens and any feedback we get from that. I do want to say to you guys, thank you for doing what you do. Dads don't always have a voice. I think dads who lift are kind of unique. I think a lot of us pursue fitness, but it just to have a group that you can come into, and though we're on, the group has some pretty funny chats and there's some weird shit that goes on in there. But I just thank you guys for creating a voice for dads, because I think more dads need to be heard in this generation that needs men to be men, but also understand truly what masculinity is. It's not toxic. It's, being the leader, and it's being the one that's going to, take care of the family and complete the other parts of the family. So I just appreciate you guys, putting that together. So thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. And that's to your point there, not to get too much into the topic, but masculinity can't die, man. It's a good thing.
No. It is a good thing, and it needs, just don't weaponize the idea of it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, well, this has been the Dads Who Live podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you guys got anything good out of this, please give us a like, share, 5-star review. We don't do any ads, anything like that. We want to grow organically, so please tell one friend. That's all we need. You tell one friend, they'll tell a friend, and we'll grow this baby organically. So we are on all the podcast formats, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, all the shit is on our website, www.dadswholiftofficial.com. We also have apparel on the website as well. Again, www.dadswholiftofficial.com. We are on Instagram as Dads Who Lift Official. We are on Facebook as Dads Who Lift Podcast. And we also have a Facebook group, which we've talked about, that Robert's a part of. That's what he was just talking about there. But that's Dads Who Lift Official on Facebook, and that is a group, not a page, a group. That's a group of 40,000 now and still growing dads that are just trying to be their best selves, like-minded dads, stay fit at the same time. If that's something that interests you, check that out. Again, Robert, thanks for coming on, man, and you guys have a great day.
It's forever, this life forever, no surrender. It's forever, this life forever. I'm bigger dead than alive, bigger dead than alive. I'm bigger dead than alive, dead than alive. I'm bigger dead than alive, bigger dead than alive.